For those who are very familiar with the royal ecosystem, I'm sure they recognize the name Richard Eden. He is a royal writer, reporter, or whatever he chooses to call himself. And he is a virulent anti-Harry and Meghan person. And he spews a lot of bile, a lot of vitriol against them. And it's been interesting that for the last month or so, or actually maybe longer, he's been talking about something called Project Thor. And I'm going to explain what that is in a minute, but his latest column, particularly after the victory tour that Harry and Meghan did in Australia, he is one of the usual suspects calling for Harry and Meghan to be stripped of their titles. And great. I think I've come to the point where, so what? You strip them of the titles and then what? Strip them of oxygen? Strip them of life? Strip them of... Harry and Meghan offered the titles back. Harry wrote. You see, this is why I like history. Harry wrote. No one has come out to say he was lying. And it's funny how the reporters have not actually examined that particular point that Harry made. He wrote offering the titles back. And they refused to take the titles from him. So if I've offered back a company car or a laptop or something, and the company refuses to take it, and then the company then uses the fact that I still have that laptop or that car in my possession to bash me over the head with, and I've got proof that I offered it back and they said no. So I don't know. But anyway, Richard Eden, he wrote his usual bile about their visit to Australia. Fair enough. So he called for the stripping of titles. He describes Harry and Meghan as running a Montecito branch of the House of Windsor. And he says that their new model for money making could ultimately spell the end of the House of Windsor if allowed to take root. Again, I don't understand. You wanted them out of your country, Meghan in particular. They left your country. You took their security. You took their home. And now you're upset that they are paying and privately funding their own visit to a country. I think what it is with people like Richard is that they are frustrated with the leftover royals who are doing sod all, who have no charisma, who have no... They've got no... In my opinion, anyway, I don't think they have any redeemable qualities. And I think the country is fed up. Everyone is fed up. The reporters are frustrated because they're not making any money off the leftover royals. The only money they could have made would have been via Harry and Meghan. But unfortunately, they don't know what's going on in Montecito. So they are reduced to speculating, to going on podcasts, to becoming YouTubers, to setting up Substacks. So they're having to work harder for their coin than they ever have. And people are being turned off by the constant hatred and bile and vitriol. And they're saying, you know what, we don't care. You know, we actually don't care. So that is what's frustrating people like Richard Eden, because they've had to work harder than they ever had. Now, let me get on to Project Thor, because again, let me get straight into it. I just wanted to give a bit of background and then I'll dive into it. So, Project Thor is, in my opinion, until I see proof of it, it's a conspiracy. And I want to address the framing of it because the new column that Richard Eden wrote deepens it. So essentially, Richard Eden is saying that there is an establishment plot named Project Thor designed to restore Harry and Meghan's relationship with the royal family and also with the British public. He describes Harry and Meghan as running the Montecito branch of the House of Windsor, and he says the Australian tour was a dangerous development. He now calls for the title removal as a solution to all that. So for me, the logical problems began immediately. Number one, if Harry and Meghan are truly running the Montecito branch of the House of Windsor, right, that to me sounds like an asset and not a liability. Branches of organizations that generate $51.6 million in media impact value for the local fashion industries in 4 days, that produce the biggest hospital crowds, that the Telegraph's Deputy Royal Editor Victoria Ward had ever seen, that delivers a keynote at international security conferences, that gets the whole world talking after arriving on an overnight train to Kyiv. They are not branches that functioning organizations strip of their authority. So if I were a corporate and I heard that a particular branch of my organization is doing so well locally, would I be jealous that, okay, that branch is doing better than the people in the head office? Is it logical to be jealous of that? Or would I say, oh, this is great, actually. They're making me look good. Carry on. You see, logic and royal reporting are like this. Like somebody says, it seems like wisdom has been trying to catch up with royal reporting, and royal reporting keeps running faster. That is what I feel. So that's number one. I would have thought that branch that is doing really, really well of an organization is the one that you will continue to invest in. In fact, you would send the non-functional branches for training, or you would actually bring in the manager of that branch into head office and say, okay, what are you doing that's different? What are you doing that's getting results? But again, that would require a work ethic, which the person they tend to directly compare Harry to, which is the other brother, does not have. Because what happened yesterday, while Harry was giving critically acclaimed, once-in-a-lifetime type speeches that got everybody talking. Remember, I did a breakdown of his speech. I knew, you see, I keep telling you, this guy's speeches are incredible, right? So I did a video on that yesterday. Go watch it. But I would have thought that while Harry was giving that kind of speech, what was the other brother doing? He was playing vroom vroom. He was vroom vrooming his way into obscurity. But then again, let me carry on. So, Harry and Meghan went to Australia without any institutional backing. There was no palace coordination, no sovereign grant, no official mandate, just 9 people, commercial flights, privately funded security. That was it. And yet, they generated global coverage that one of Richard's colleagues, Robert Jobson, admitted on live BBC TV had blown out of the water all the carefully orchestrated advance briefings about the King's visit to Washington. They did not need Project Thor. Harry and Meghan did not need Project Thor to gain relevance, to make them, I don't know, whatever it is Richard thinks they need to be seen at. Because Harry and Meghan, they stand firmly on their own. I think the establishment needs Harry and Meghan far more than Harry and Meghan needs them. And I think that is why Richard Eden is panicking. Because the reality is that Project Thor is designed to obscure Harry and Meghan. It is designed to put Harry and Meghan back in a box and hide them, so that the others can shine. The narrative that the establishment is generously managing Harry and Meghan's rehabilitation is considerably more comfortable for the institution than the truth, which is that it threw away 2 of its most commercially and diplomatically valuable assets. and is now watching those assets generate star power from California and Kyiv, while Victoria Ward is filing pieces about what the royal family is missing. What they feared the most happened, because they knew if they went to Australia and got half a decent reception in Australia, it's over for the other brother and the other girl. But the reception in Australia, it exceeded their wildest expectations, and it's become their biggest nightmare. And that is why Richard is banging on still about Project Thor, as if it was a deliberate establishment thing that allowed Harry and Meghan to be on their own for a few years, and now that they're on their own, we can now bring them back into the fold. No, thank you. This is how a cult works. You leave the cult and they are still keeping tabs on you, and they're doing it via people like Richard Eden. But anyway, Harry and Meghan are the Duke and Duchess of Sussex by royal grant. Because now I want to address the stripping of the title situation. They are Duke and Duchess by royal grant. Harry is styled as Prince by birth. So what part of by birth don't people understand? Removing these designations will require specific action. The same kind of action that has not been taken with Andrew, despite Andrew being under criminal investigation for misconduct in public office. And also, Andrew has a 3% positive rating in YouGov. I wonder who the 3% were that gave him Imagine he still gets a 3% positive rating. That shows you how brainwashed some people are in the UK. But anyway, let me carry on. So if the same institution cannot strip Andrew of his title, because he hasn't been, despite his arrest, his name has been removed from the roll of peerages, but to strip him requires a specific act of parliament, and that didn't take place. Meanwhile, tell me what constitutional basis you have of stripping Harry, who has committed no offence, who built Invictus, built Centre Ballet before it was hostilely taken over, and who was at the Australian War Memorial last week, and who stood up and gave, I think, one of the most important speeches when it comes to the situation happening in Ukraine, and you are telling me he should be stripped, Meghan should be stripped, their children should be stripped. Richard, I have news for you. You will keep crying into your beans on toast until the cows come home, because I don't think anyone is going to be stripping Harry of his titles anytime soon. And if it does happen, guess what? We will continue to call them Harry and Meghan, just like we call Madonna, Madonna, just like we call Beyonce, Beyonce, just like we call a lot of important people by their names. Just one name. That's it. You talk about Meghan, people think you're talking about Meghan Sussex. You talk about Harry, people know you're talking about Prince Harry. So yeah. But anyway, let me have your thoughts in the comments, please. My name's Elizabeth. I'm the author of The Luxpreneur. And for more insights like these, please like, share, comment, and hit the subscribe button. And make sure you are subscribing to Elizabeth Solaru 4970, please. That is my only channel on YouTube, my only channel on this platform. And to support my work in holding truth to power, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Elizabeth Solaru, or you can get a copy of my book, The Luxpreneur, from Amazon, Waterstones, or Barnes and Noble.
Project Thor. Why the establishment needs Harry and Meghan. The deeper problem with Project Thor is what it requires you to believe about the balance of power. It requires you to believe that Harry and Meghan need the establishment more than the establishment needs them. The Australian tour destroyed that argument in 4 days. Harry and Meghan went to Australia without institutional backing. No palace coordination, no sovereign grant, no official mandate. 9 people, commercial flights, privately funded security. And they generated global coverage that Robert Jobson admitted on live BBC television had blown out of the water all the carefully orchestrated advance briefings about Charles's Washington state visit. They did not need Project Thor. The establishment needs them. That is the reality that Project Thor is designed to obscure. The narrative that the establishment is generously managing Harry and Meghan's rehabilitation is considerably more comfortable for the institution than the truth, which is that it threw away 2 of its most commercially and diplomatically valuable assets and is now watching those assets generate inarguable star power from California and Kyiv, while Victoria Ward files pieces about what the royal family is missing. The false premise of Project Thor. Richard Eden's conspiracy theory claims an establishment plot exists to rehabilitate Harry and Meghan. That framing is the first problem. It positions the Sussexes as damaged goods requiring restoration, as assets in need of repair, as figures whose standing must be carefully managed back toward acceptability. The premise itself is the sleight of hand. It requires you to accept that Harry and Meghan are the ones who need something from this arrangement, that they are the supplicants. That Project Thor, if it existed, would be an act of institutional generosity extended downward to 2 people who require the establishment's blessing to function. That narrative obscures the true power dynamic between the royals and the Sussexes. The Australian tour made that dynamic explicit. 9 people, commercial flights, privately funded security, no palace coordination, no sovereign grant, no official mandate, and they generated global coverage that Robert Jobson admitted on live BBC television had blown out of the water all the carefully orchestrated advance briefings about Charles's Washington state visit. They did not need Project Thor. The establishment needs them. That is what the framing is designed to hide. The logical flaw in Eden's argument. The logical problems begin immediately. If Harry and Meghan are running the Montecito branch of the House of Windsor, that is a description of an asset, not a liability. Branches of organisations that generate £51.6 million in media impact value for local fashion industries in 4 days, that produce the biggest hospital crowds the Telegraph's deputy royal editor has ever seen, that deliver keynote addresses at international security conferences and arrive on overnight trains to Kyiv, are not branches that functioning organisations strip of their authority. They are branches that functioning organisations invest in. The Australian tour as proof of independence. Harry and Meghan went to Australia without institutional backing. No palace coordination, no sovereign grant, no official mandate. 9 people, commercial flights, privately funded security. And they generated global coverage that Robert Jobson admitted on live BBC television had blown out of the water all the carefully orchestrated advance briefings about Charles's Washington state visit. They did not need the machinery. They did not need the briefings. They did not need the establishment apparatus that Eden assumes is indispensable. They needed 9 people and a commercial flight, and they produced media impact that overshadowed a state visit backed by the full weight of Buckingham Palace's communications infrastructure. That is not a branch that needs rehabilitation. That is a branch that is demonstrating in real time that the value flows in the opposite direction of what Project Thor assumes. The real power imbalance. It requires you to believe that Harry and Meghan need the establishment more than the establishment needs them. The Australian tour destroyed that argument in 4 days. The truth is precisely the reverse. The institution threw away 2 of its most commercially and diplomatically valuable assets, and is now watching those assets generate inarguable star power from California and Kyiv, while palace correspondents file pieces about what the royal family is missing. Harry and Meghan went to Australia without institutional backing, without palace coordination, without the sovereign grant, without official mandate, and generated global coverage that Robert Jobson admitted on live BBC television had blown out of the water all the carefully orchestrated advance briefings about Charles's Washington state visit. They arrived in Kyiv on an overnight train. They generated $51.6 million in media impact value for local fashion in 4 days. They did not need Project Thor. The establishment needs them. That is the reality Project Thor is designed to obscure. The title-stripping proposal removing titles would require specific constitutional action, the same kind of action that has not been taken with Andrew, despite him being under criminal investigation for misconduct in public office and having a 3% positive rating in the YouGov poll. If the institution cannot strip Andrew, who has been arrested, it is difficult to understand the constitutional basis for stripping Harry, who has committed no offence, who built Invictus, who was at the Australian War Memorial last week and in Kyiv on Thursday, and who sends flowers to his grandmother's grave without a press release. The institution that Eden represents is blocking the security restoration that would allow Harry's children to visit safely. And Eden is calling for that same institution to strip their father's titles while taking no action against Andrew. The contrast makes itself. The personal cost of institutional obstruction. The friend of the royals also said something that I think is the most important line in the entire Eden column. They said the king hopes to see more of his son and spend time with his grandchildren. Harry's son is 6, his daughter is 4. Charles has not seen them in 4 years. The institution that Eden represents is blocking the security restoration that would allow those children to visit safely. And Eden is calling for the institution to strip their father's titles. The undeniable success of the Sussexes. The Montecito branch continues building and winning despite institutional opposition, and the empirical record is unambiguous. Their impact spans commercial, diplomatic and humanitarian spheres, with a consistency that defies the palace briefings about irrelevance. $51.6 million in media impact value. Keynote addresses at international security conferences. Hospital crowds, the Telegraph's deputy royal editor described as the biggest he had ever seen. Harry remains in Kyiv, while the establishment debates stripping titles, which tells you everything you need to know about where the actual power sits and where the actual work is being done. The institution can brief about rehabilitation and Project Thor and careful management all it likes. But the Sussexes are not waiting for permission, and they are not asking for validation, and the results speak considerably louder than Richard Eden's columns.